Hello, I'm David DeCosmo. Our program is At Your Service. We have been talking about services available to people throughout our area and the agencies that provide those services. Today, we are at the regional headquarters for the American Red Cross, and our guest is Sherry Nealon, who is the Executive Director of the Red Cross for Northeastern Pennsylvania.
Hi,
Sherry, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you.
First of all, we should point out that this is a very wide area that this particular office covers.
Right.
Give us an idea as to just how wide.
So we're 9 counties. We're everywhere: Bradford, Sullivan, all the way Lackawanna, Luzerne, and all the way Monroe. We have 9 counties that we're covering. Almost 1 million people are protected and served within our agency.
Generally speaking, when people think about Red Cross, one of the first things that comes to their mind would be blood donations, because there's always an appeal. Now, that is still a function of the office.
Oh, yes, yes. So we function on donations, right? So donors, our blood donation, and our blood donors are really the foundation of who we are. You can't replace blood. Without blood and giving the gift of life, we can't go on with our normal business. So I would beckon to say that no one has not been infected by someone who is in need of blood, who's wanted blood, and we are very proud to be presenters and help with the people who dedicate their time and give
The
donations.
constant appeal for blood suggests that donations may be down, or else the need is up, or perhaps it's a combination.
Right, right. So what we see, even during times of year, people tend to take vacations. People tend to go by school schedules or what they're doing with their work. And our regular donors who are scheduled change their donation times. So we are always in a constant appeal, but at certain times we do need more elected surgeries or people, with unforeseen reasons to need blood. So depending on what the need is what our ask is to the public, so that we can get ahead of it and stay on it, so we never go without a time without having blood.
Well, the other focus of Red Cross that one would normally think about is disaster relief and response, for instance, to hurricanes, to tornadoes. You're here in northeastern Pennsylvania. We have very few tornadoes, although we've had some. Right. Does your office still respond to that if it happens in another state?
Oh, yes. So right now, as we speak, we have people in Hawaii. We have people all over the place who are responding. Yeah. So our volunteers go everywhere. They're trained and they are ready to go. They sign up for certain times that they're available and when they're available. And when the ask goes out, they sign up, and usually they're deployed for a week to 3 weeks, depending on what the ask is. And they go out and they provide shelter assistance or meals, depending on what the need is. And then they come back and we do it again. So our volunteers are always involved.
So if there's a disaster in Kentucky, in Florida, it's likely that somebody from northeastern Pennsylvania will be responding.
Right, and that's the best part about Red Cross, because no matter where the need is, there are people who can respond no matter where the ask is. And that's the best part. So if anything ever does happen, in our area, that we are in need of people to come in and help, they're everywhere to do that and trained very well.
Well, now I say that's the focus, but we're here to talk about regional. And we have our share of regional disasters that don't involve tornadoes necessarily. Fires, for instance. Red Cross, that is one of your functions, is it not?
Right. So we have we respond to single and multifamily home fires constantly within our area. That is what we do. And our job, our volunteers go in and they assess the need individually. They're the second to respond on scene. And they decide what the family needs or the person needs, and they help them with food, shelter, clothing, medication, depending on what the need is per client, and helps them with their immediate need. And then our caseworkers take over from there, and they do an assessment and a recovery plan for them to help them make connections within the area with other agencies who can do what to help them speed up the recovery time as well.
So it doesn't end with the immediate response?
Oh, no. We keep them on board until we can make sure that when they are going to the next agency that they are ready and their recovery is already in place.
And this volunteer effort, I would say the bulk of your staff would then be volunteers.
Right. Most of our staff is volunteers. We're 90% volunteer driven. We have 10% staff, and without volunteers, there would be no Red Cross, and there would be no response. So I always say the org chart is a little upside down because the volunteers are at the top, and we actually know that we're the ones who have to, make sure that we have a great sense of volunteerism.
And with a volunteer offering his or her time to an agency like Red Cross, there has to be so many facets of specific actions. So if I were to come in and say, look, I want to give some of my time to help Red Cross. In my case, I've been a broadcaster all my life. Someone else may come in who's been a teacher, someone else who perhaps has driven a truck. How do you utilize one's talents?
Well, David, we make sure that we're utilizing the talent. So, I would have you be doing this interview if you were one of our volunteers. But we also make sure that it's about making sure that the volunteer feels that they're needed and what they have to offer is utilized. So our volunteer coordinator does an assessment of them, what they like, what they don't like, what they feel that they can give as their volunteer time. And that's how they decide on what role they're going to play. If you look on any of our low listings for volunteers, they're job descriptions. So we have pretty much written out job descriptions and what you would be doing and how you would be doing it and where, what county. There's a lot that goes into it. But we make sure that our volunteers know that they are going to be utilized and feel good at the end of the day, because we are going to make sure that they're doing what they want to do.
And what is the status of your need for volunteers? Because I know in some agencies, some people have been volunteering for years. They're getting older. They don't have quite the same amount of time. So I would assume, A, that the need is constant as far as getting volunteers. But what about the quota? What about the people you're drawing from? Are you getting them?
Well, right now, we always have an ask. There's always an ask for volunteers, and we will always continue to have an ask for volunteers because our agency, we do so much, and with different facets of who we are and who we respond to. But we even start in schools when the kids are young to make sure that they can come in. We have Red Cross clubs around where we start the clubs off early within school districts.
What would they do in a Red Cross club?
They can do anything from help us with, we have a fire alarm response where we go out and we install fire alarms for people's houses. And they can help with that. They can help us with making sure that if somebody has a donation or does a drive, that they're there to help. So there's so many different things the Red Cross clubs can sponsor and be part of. And sometimes they do their own projects as well, where they'll look and say, okay, well, we can do help put on a class for the young kids to help them with preparedness. There's so much that they can do. And it starts off early, and we like to get them in the door early, because then if they feel and they see what they've done for Red Cross, the hope is that they'll want to continue.
And maybe make a volunteer career out of it.
And a lot of times, too, my feeling is that there are people now who are becoming able to volunteer who might not have been, whether your position or your job had stopped you from having time or whatever. They're the people as well. Like, we look at what you did for a living, what you did and what your gifts were, and we put them in place with what you can do here as well.
What about training for those who would like to volunteer?
Extreme training. So we make sure that you're very well trained, that you don't have any questions, and that you know what you're doing, because we're dealing with very valuable time here and people who are in difficult situations. And we always make sure that the people are prepared, and when the volunteer goes, that they're confident and they know what they're doing.
I don't want to skip over one thing you mentioned when it came to perhaps utilizing the youth. You mentioned the smoke alarms, smoke detectors. You're still giving those to homes?
Right, so we go into different areas. I believe our next one will be scheduled for Lackawanna County, so keep watching for that date. But we go into underserved areas and at-risk areas, and we do a whole day of installing alarms in volunteers in people's houses with volunteers, with kids who can help out. And we go in and we teach you, here's what you need to do for your escape plan. Here's what to do. Make sure that, we install it in the right area so that you're not worried about your kitchen or your other things. But it's it's a wonderful service. And it's great because we see a lot of times people didn't even know that theirs weren't working. A lot of times they didn't even know that, I didn't have one on that floor, I was supposed to have one. So it really does help a community, and it helps us in the long run, because we don't want to respond to all the fires if we don't have to, right? So prevention and planning is part of it.
Sure. And I assume that people can call Red Cross to
Yes.
check on the status of that particular program?
And any program. So 1-800 Red Cross you can call. You can go on redcross.org all the time. We have apps you can download in the store if you want to learn anything that we do, and you could even sign up for blood drives on that. So there's a lot that we do that to help it make more convenience for people.
When we began, I talked about those things people normally think about, the blood donations, the disaster response. There are a lot of things they don't think about. CPR.
Right.
What do you do with regard to CPR?
Right, so we do all the training and certification for CPR as well as many other classes. So, you know, when people are trained and you see them out there, we're the ones who are performing that, and we're helping them, you know, save lives in the meantime. So we always have constant classes and certification going on. You can find that as well listed on the website in all of our areas. You'll be able to find where you can go and what time, and we do that constantly. Yeah, it's always going on.
Here again, it goes back to the training, though.
Yes.
So you want someone that's going to perform CPR to know exactly what they're doing,
Yes.
so they've got to spend the time to do that training,
Right,
of course.
and certification's a good thing. We even have a train the trainer where you can go and become someone who can train other people as well. So there are many things that we do that I think people aren't aware of. But we always say we're here when they need us, right? So the whole idea is to make sure that they're prepared and that we can do the best we can to make awareness.
Well, one of the other training programs that used to be offered, and perhaps you can bring me up to date on this, is lifeguard work.
Yes.
Now, one of the greatest needs we've seen throughout the area this summer is a need for lifeguards.
Right.
A number of pools have been shut down, and it isn't because the pools are in bad condition.
Right, 'cause we don't
It
have
was
the
because they did not have lifeguards. What does Red Cross? How do you fit in with that?
We still train lifeguards. We still certify lifeguards, babysitting programs as well, to have babysitters pass and be trained as well for babysitting, so that if anything happens to the child, they're prepared as well. So we do a lot that is to make sure that, you know, the things that we did from the beginning have just evolved. They've evolved with the times, and yes, we're still here training lifeguards. You're not getting into pool here, but they're out there having the programs.
Well, when it comes to all of these services, when a person is in need of help, that help comes, and they're not charged for it. But the training, the facilities, the material that goes into training,
Yes.
All cost money. So how do you function?
So we're on donations. Our donors are our life, and whether you're donating blood, time, or funds, our donations, 90 cents on each dollar goes to mission. We're very proud of that.
Guys, let's not go over that.
Yes.
So 90 cents of each dollar
Right.
actually goes into the
mission.
field.
Right, goes to the people who need it, and not towards overhead. Yes, we are very proud of those numbers, and that's why we know without our volunteer workforce this couldn't happen. We make sure that the donors know that when they donate their money, it's going to the people who need it.
You began by talking about the size of the area that you cover just here in the northeastern Pennsylvania, off 9 counties. How is it possible to respond to 9 counties? You may have a fire that breaks out in Monroe County, and the same day you may have a fire that breaks out in Luzerne County. So you've got to have volunteers to respond to both of those cases. That's just 2 instances, and I'm sure there are days when perhaps there are more.
Oh, yes. So we have volunteers trained in the counties. And they know the counties they're to respond to, and they're trained within those counties. So just because we might not have an office there, most of our positions are being out in the field anyway. So they are trained, they can get what they need to get to respond, and vehicle placement where they can find it and get there, so that they're ready to respond no matter where the incident happens.
So each of the 9 counties has a contingent of volunteers, and I guess in some cases they might go from one county to another
depending on, so it goes by volunteer whether they're available. So we have a website, it's called Volunteer Connection, and our volunteers sign on for times that they're able to come, times they're able to work, and when the ask goes out, people respond accordingly by the ask. So it all goes by that. Also, what we're asking for. So if we're asking for someone to respond to the fire on the event, to get to the scene, to help out with the first assessment, that's a different team than the people who might be doing the casework later on. So they are different teams, and depending on what the ask is, the team responds.
And you have a couple of regional headquarters.
Yes.
But the contingent of volunteers would be there whether or not there's an actual office.
Right. So most of our resources are within the people we have. And our people are all over the place in every county,
So
ready to respond.
let me ask you a question about, suppose I am in Wyoming County, or suppose I'm in Monroe County. I have some need that I think Red Cross might address. Where do they go with their question? Where do they go with their appeal?
They can call, well, first of all, if you call 1-800-RED CROSS, they put you right here, depending on what county you're looking for. But you can also call the chapter as well. You can call here the NEPA Chapter in Wilkes-Barre, and they will help you as well. But no matter what, if you called 1-800-RED CROSS, they will make sure that the message gets here. We have people there that work around the clock that do nothing but make sure that the messages and that the questions get to where they need to get.
I would think that your demand for help probably varies a lot by the time of year.
Yes.
I'm thinking fall, early winter, we see more fires.
Right.
From a news point of view, that was always the case.
Correct.
So
yeah, unfortunately.
Is that when the demand is highest for services?
Yes, unfortunately, last year was probably the most we've responded in home fires and in family fires, I would say in years and years. So I've never seen numbers so high. It was constant. It was during the holiday time as well. It seemed to be really a lot of response last year. So we're always looking for people to respond and make sure that we can get our volunteers out there to assess the situation. And they did an amazing job last year in really tough circumstances. But they were all taken care of, and our clients were very happy with the work they did. So that lets us know that we're ready. And half of Red Cross is being prepared. So our job is preparedness. So we make sure that we're ready no matter what.
One of the reasons that we began this program was to make sure people knew about the services that are available. Are you concerned that a lot of people in those 9 counties, for instance, don't really know what services totally are available?
Right. So I think that happens with all of us. I think people tend to think of us one way or another. They think of blood services, or they think of, oh, there's a fire, Red Cross is there because they see it on the news. But they don't realize all the service to the armed forces we do. We do many things, the training and certifications. So I really would ask if just look and see. If you go online and see all that we do, I'm sure there's something that you will find your heart close to. Because that's really hard not to.
And you mentioned armed services,
Yes.
and I remember in days gone by hearing a situation where someone would pass away, and it was Red Cross that was able to bring the serviceman or woman home under those circumstances. So I guess that is still an available service.
It really is. Reunification is one of our big programs to make sure that the family can get together when they need to, or in the case of trying to make sure that someone comes home to be with the family during a difficult time, or sometimes other situations. But Red Cross is the only one who could do that. And we're very proud of that program as well in our partnerships.
I think that it's an understatement to say that you serve the public, because it does. The public is served so many ways by Red Cross. How do you see the future for the agency, especially in this area?
Right. So I think that as things change and we see a lot more happening with weather, a lot more happening, that we're going to be changing the way we respond, because I think we're going to be in for different things that we haven't seen before. As you said, we've had flooding in the past. We've had a lot of flooding, but I think we're seeing flooding in different areas now and different patterns. So I really do see that nothing but our need going up and our value in where we respond being leaned on a little bit more. So our job is to make sure that we're prepared for that. And if you want to volunteer, please come on board. We'd love to have you. And all the donations keep coming in so that we can continue to do the work we do.
So your challenges really are to continue providing service, but also to adapt to different challenges. And I had mentioned earlier, we have finally seen a couple tornadoes right in this area. Climate change has apparently hit, whatever the cause. There have been obviously major changes in weather patterns, and those changes often create disastrous situations. But there are situations you may not have had to deal with 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Right.
So adaptation is going to be perhaps your biggest challenge.
Right, but you do see a lot of our volunteers going to other areas, so they have responded to these type of events. They are trained to respond to these type of events. We do a lot of mass sheltering, outside of Pennsylvania and Scranton, but we do it here as well. So learning that and having our partnerships already set up and established. If this happens, we work with a lot of the utility companies. If something happens and the power goes out, and they need to make sure that somewhere residents have a place to go, we work with them as well. So a lot of it's just making sure that we're keeping on top of all of our preparedness efforts.
Well, in final summary, then, if someone is either looking for Red Cross assistance or perhaps has the time to consider being a volunteer for Red Cross, what do you want them to do?
I want you to call us, 1-800-RED-CROSS. We would love to have you. You can always reach me, Sherry Nealon, anytime you want. I'm really want to say that my passion for this Red Cross initiatives aren't just a little bit of who I am. They are 100% of who I am, and we are so lucky that we have the people around us and the volunteers that do what they do, and every day. Without everyone on board, it doesn't work. So we are lucky to have everybody on board, and thank you so much for this opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Well, it's an important agency. It does a great job in so many, many fields. We wanted to make sure that some of those were offered on our program. So Sherry Nealon, thank you so much for joining us. Sherry is Executive Director of the Red Cross of Northeastern Pennsylvania. I'm David D. Cosmo. Our program is at your service, and until we see you again next time, I hope all your news is good.